The question is that the bill be read the second time. Any debate? The Acting Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity given to present my statement on the Investment, Trade and Business Development Amendment Bill 2024. As you are aware, the Ministry is responsible for the promoting trade, investment and business development in the country. The Investment, Trade and Business Development Act number 18 of 2022 was enacted in order to provide for mechanisms to strengthen the implementation of the policy framework on trade, investment and business development so as to promote the development of the globally competitive economy. Mr. Speaker, during the implementation of the Act, it was noted that the definition of rural area in the Investment, Trade and Business Development Act was assigned the meaning in the Income Tax Act, which reads as follows, and I quote, "Any area which is not an area declared or deemed to have been declared in an area or city or municipality under the Local Government Act, Cap 281, but excluding the area declared to be in the area of the Kafue Township under the said Act," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the definition excludes all municipal councils from being rural areas. This reduces the number of districts to benefit from rural area incentives, which has affected a number of applicants who are unable to access these incentives due to the current definition of rural area. Further, it should be noted that in its current state, the Investment, Trade and Business Development Act number 18 of 2022 provides for incentives only for greenfield projects. This has been a disincentive to existing investors wishing to expand their investment. Mr. Speaker, in light of this, the Act is being amended by deletion of the current definition of rural area in the Investment, Trade and Business Development Act number 18 of 2022. By deletion of the definition of rural area, the Act will assume the meaning of the respective piece, or rather pieces of legislation that offers the incentive being applied for. Excuse me. For instance, if an investor seeks a customs duty waiver, the definition of the Customs and Excise Act will apply, which defines rural area as, and I quote, "an area that is not declared or deemed to have been declared as the area of Ndola City Council, Kitwe City Council, Livingston City Council, and Lusaka City Council under the Local Government Act." Further, Mr. Speaker, the Act is being amended to provide for incentives for the expansion of projects in order to strengthen the legal framework and the trade and investment promotion in the country. Mr. Speaker, the objective of the bill are, but not limited to, the following. A, delete the definition of rural area. B, extend the eligibility for incentives to investors who invest in an expansion project in a special economic zone, priority sector, or rural area. And C, extend the eligibility for incentives to investors who invest in new projects, all expansion projects in a farm block. And last but not the least, D, provide for matters connected with all incidental to the foregoing. Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendments are expected to strengthen the legal and institutional framework on investment promotion, as well as increase the coverage of districts that would benefit from rural area incentives, thereby promoting trade and investment across the country. Examples of towns that will be covered for incentives in the amendment bill include Chongwe, Kabwe, Kafue, and Luansha, among others. Similarly, examples of companies that may benefit from the provision of the incentives to non-greenfield investment that wish to expand include Mamba Collieries Limited and Mulungushi Textiles. Mr. Speaker, the bill will encourage investment in expansion projects which will accelerate industrialization, promote higher economic growth, promote job creation, poverty reduction, and assist the country to remain competitive as well as being attractive. Mr. Speaker, once implemented, the bill will provide for a wider coverage of districts in the country that will qualify for access and benefit from rural area incentives. Increased coverage of districts to benefit from the rural area incentive will help promote trade and investment across the country and in the long run accelerate industrialization, which will lead to the economic growth and invariably widen the tax base. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, in line of the information provided, it is necessary to introduce the Investment, Trade and Business Development Amendment Bill 2024 in order to strengthen the legal and institutional framework on investment promotion so as to promote the trade and investment across the country. I would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to urge the honourable members of Parliament to fully support this bill. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Any further debate? The chairperson of the Committee on Cabinet Affairs, the Honourable Member for Chipangali.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Cabinet Affairs was tasked to scrutinize the Investment and Business Development Amendment Bill, National Assembly number 3 of 2024, referred to it by the House on 23 February 2024. The bill seeks to amend the Investment, Trade and Business Development Act 2022 so as to delete the definition of rural area, extend eligibility for incentives to investors who invest in an expansion project in a special economic zone, priority sector, or rural area, and also to extend the eligibility of incentives to investors who invest in a new project or expansion project in a farm block. Mr. Speaker, all the stakeholders who appeared before the committee supported the bill. The Committee on Cabinet Affairs equally supports the bill fully, and specifically the proposal to extend the eligibility criteria for incentives in expansion projects in the special economic zones or priority sector or rural area. This has the potential to boost investment across various projects, fostering economic growth, particularly in previously neglected areas. Mr. Speaker, the committee is aware that the government has opened up farm blocks across the country, and therefore extending incentives to investment in farm blocks has the potential to attract investment, promote export-led agriculture, and create employment. Rural area and farm block expansion have the potential to drive rural development mitigation, urban-rural economic gap. While supporting the bill, I would like to bring to your attention a few concerns raised by the stakeholders, which have also been captured in the committee's report. Mr. Speaker, the committee agrees with the stakeholders regarding the limitation of the existing law on investment and trade, where the definition of rural area has the meaning assigned to the words in the Income Tax Act, Chapter 323 of the laws of Zambia. In its current form, this piece of legislation excludes all municipal councils, resulting in a reduced number of districts that can benefit from incentives extended to rural areas. Mr. Speaker, while the committee appreciates the deletion of the definition of rural area in the current Investment, Trade and Business Development Act, it is of the view that doing so without offering an alternative could lead to inconsistency in enforcement. In light of this, the committee recommends that the government should provide a clear definition of rural area to ensure certainty and prevent potential disputes. Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude by thanking all the stakeholders who appeared before the Committee on Cabinet Affairs. Let me also thank you and the Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly for the guidance and support rendered to the Committee on Cabinet Affairs throughout its deliberation. I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Any further debate? The Acting Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, wind-up debate.
Mr. Speaker, I am very, very delighted that both members on the left and on the right are very, very excited with this amendment of the bill. That shows to indicate the resolve of our government, the government of the UPND, that is looking at opportunities of becoming more homegrown in terms of solutions. And this particular piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, will encourage a number of local entrepreneurs to get into business. And His Excellency the President has been on record indicating that we would like to positively discriminate. And such piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, is one such that will allow a number of us to actually get into business and grow our economy, as it were. Mr. Speaker, I thank everyone who listened in, and I beg to move.
I put the question, and the question is that the bill now be read the second time. As many of that opinion say aye, of the contrary say no. The ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. Let the bill be read the second time.
The Investment, Trade and Business Development Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2024.
Committee stage to be taken when?
Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Minister is happy. Committee stage to be taken tomorrow. Next order.
Thanks, His Excellency the President's address. Motion of 19th March, resumption of debate.
When the House adjourned yesterday, Tuesday, 19th March 2024, the House was considering the motion moved by the Honorable Member for Chama South that the thanks of this Assembly be recorded for the exposition of public policy content in His Excellency the President's address. Any further debate? The Honorable Member for Kawata.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to state it on the onset that we do support the motion that is before the floor. However, Mr. Speaker, allow me first of all to quote what the President said on page 1, and he quoted from Article number 9 of our Constitution, which requires that the President reports to the August House the progress made in the application of national values and the principles. Again, you go down on the same page. He says the national values and principles are important in the molding the character of our nation. They influence our conduct as individuals and society. Mr. Speaker, I read somewhere where it says that train up a child in the way he should go, so that when he's old, he may not depart away from the training. These are principles and values. Values and principles are actually found in any organizations. Families have got values and principles. You go to organization, they equally have values and principles which they follow. Even as a nation has to have some principles and values that each one of us has to follow. In the presidential speech, he categorically talked about morality and ethics. So today, I will dwell much on morality and ethics so that thereafter I'll also touch on the issue of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, the President did indicate of the moral decay in our nation. Today, if you look at so many young men who are actually struggling with the issues of drug abuse, issues to do with alcoholism. Today, Mr. Speaker, you go around, even in rural areas, you find there are young men and young women who are now being called junkies. But in the rural areas, these young men, They do not attack. They are not involved in any criminal activities. But when you go in the urban setup, you find that these young men are living a life of criminality. Mr. Speaker, the young men in the rural areas, what worries me is that they live a life of wasted years. Most of them, they could have either attained grade 12, and they have a grade 12 certificate, but they have got nothing to do. Mr. Speaker, in the presidential speech, he did actually indicate on how the nation was making progress on how to reverse this trend. He talked about the training that the community, especially in different chiefdoms, have received, including religious circles. And that's the reason why today, if you look at some countries like Haiti, they are grappling with the issue of junkies, or you call them gangsters. Because if you do not try to control the levels or minimize the levels of these young men you are calling today junkies, you find that the nation will lose its moral decay. Principles and national values, they are very important, Mr. Speaker, and that's the reason why every time when we are growing up, when we are teaching our children, we need to emphasize the principles and values that we need to impact in our children. Today we have so many young men who are trying to aspire in leadership. But today when you look at their characters, if you look at their moral standing in society, you doubt that even these guys are not supposed to be in the leadership position. Why is it so? It's because of the moral aspect, the principles that they have lost as a nation. Mr. Speaker, allow me to talk also about the issue of gender-based violence. Today we are hearing of cases of men killing women, or husband killing wives, and the wives also doing the same. Why is it so, Mr. Speaker? It is because of the issue of the principles and morals and values that have gone down in a nation. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this, that if we want to progress as a nation, we need to start now moving forward, trying to incorporate even religious leaders, so that we can now try and change the trajectory of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you something that other people have never said on the issue of gender-based violence. Today we are seeing young girls involving themselves in illicit activities. Today you see young men being killed by their either spouses or even other people. Mr. Speaker, the levels at which these things are happening are so worrying. And that's the reason why we need to come up with a solution. I know there's a national policy on alcohol. I know that there is a rehab center that is supposed to be introduced. But we need to do more so that we can overcome some of these challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to talk about the issue of patriotism and national unity. Mr. Speaker, I know that many products that are produced in Zambia, in the past, many Zambians never wanted to associate with anything that is made in Zambia. But today, I can tell you, with the progress that we've made on the application of national values and principles, we are talking of numbers going as far as 109 from the number of 69. Almost 109 companies today, they are proudly using the logo of the Proud Zambian campaign. And this is what we need to see if our nation is to develop. You go to China, everything that you see in China is made in China, made in China. Why can't we also start encouraging local products that are being made in Zambia so that we can advance the issue of products that are made in Zambia can be advanced and advertised at a different level, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also talk on the issue of procurement. Mr. Speaker, the President did actually indicate on how we have advanced. Today, as we are speaking, most of the desks that we are manufacturing in Kawata constituency, they are actually being made by the local people. And this is what we wanted to see. And this is what we were yearning. In the past, would you hear of some big guys being given contract to go and make desks in China. But that trend has been reversed, Mr. Speaker. We are now seeing real development and promotion of local indigenous companies here in Zambia performing some of the jobs that we should have been doing them even in the past, Mr. Speaker. Today, Mr. Speaker, transformation, restoration, and also effective and influence. These are some of the key values and principles that can change and mold society. So we need to know that whatever we do in our lives, we have to impact society with influence. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Isoka.
Page 6, first paragraph, second line, where it says, I quote, "Further, the ministries of Health, Defense and Home Affairs and Internal Security are now equally expected to procure local manufactured uniforms and other materials." Mr. Speaker, we have Mlungushi Textiles in Kabwe, which is supposed to manufacture uniforms and other materials locally. What is government doing about this company? Because the enhanced production and consumption of local products will create more jobs and business opportunities for our people. It means more economic growth and resilience for our economy. If we revamp our Mlungushi textiles, we'll continue manufacturing local materials and our people will be buying cheaper items or materials. This will improve, and it will also help our local industries to grow. Mr. Speaker, another area where we need to exercise a deep sense of patriotism is in safeguarding of the public and private properties in our country. These assets are built at a huge cost, and we need to safeguard these properties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we safeguard these properties, there cannot be vandalism, and even theft cannot be there. Like, for instance, we have Michael Chirufyasata in Isoka constituency. It's a girls' secondary school, which has been stored for quite a long time. And as I'm talking to you now, vandalism is taking place there. Even theft is taking place there. There are also other properties, public properties in Chinsali, like Mushindo University, and also Auditor's General's Office. These buildings have now stayed like white elephants. But vandalism is being taken place from these properties, Mr. Speaker. We need to make sure that government complete these properties so that vandalism cannot take place, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the country has continued to witness the loss of public properties through vandalism and theft. Mr. Speaker, let me talk about recruitment of teachers. Mr. Speaker, on the recruitment of teachers, we urge government to recruit teachers who are in their districts. Like, for instance, when they recruit teachers in their own districts, they will not go elsewhere. when they recruit teachers like from Lusaka, when they go to Isoka, they'll just go and work for some few months and then go back to where they came from. So we are urging government to make sure that they recruit teachers from within their districts, because these teachers from within their districts, they are used to staying in their communities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also talk about morality and ethics. Mr. Speaker, the government is concerned with incidences of social vices such as early marriage, early child marriage, teenage pregnancies, gender-based violence, alcohol, and substance abuse. Mr. Speaker, alcohol and substance abuse has continued to be a major concern in our country and has a negative impact on families and national productivity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the abuse of alcohol and drugs among our youth has contributed to the increase of juvenile criminals known as junkies. Let us call on all members of parliament, traditional leaders, churches, and other stakeholders to join government to sensitize our youth and communities on this vice. On GBV, Mr. Speaker, this vice undermines the health, dignity, and self-esteem, Mr. Speaker. It was increased to 42,965 in 2023, from 33,536 in 22. And these acts of violence have, in some cases, resulted in the loss of lives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we urge victims to report these cases to relevant authorities so that we can curb the victims, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because of the above vices, there has been a high number of divorce cases in our country, particularly among young couples, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we urge families, churches, traditional leaders, civic society, and the community organization to enhance marriage counseling and teachings, Mr. Speaker. Mr.
Order.
Speaker,
Your time
to conclude,
is up.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Sikongo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity given to the people of Congo to debate the President's speech on the progress made on the application of national values and principles. I think from the onset, allow me to, to state that the President has actually shown positive leadership in the application of our national values and principles, in the sense that I think we have seen some improvement in a number of areas. Our national values and principles, of course, are anchored in Article 8 of our Constitution. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to center my debate on the last principle, that is of sustainable development. And allow me to define it as a form of human development in which resource use aims to meet the human needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about sustainable development, there are three major core elements which are very critical to this principle, and these are economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. Sustainable development, Mr. Speaker, is aimed at uplifting the lives of the citizens so that those that are currently alive are able to enjoy life to its fullest, but at the same time, future generations should also come to enjoy their life as well. So what this simply means is that as we develop today, we should not deplete our natural resources to the extent that the future generations fail to live their lives. So I think when you talk about the economic growth in terms of how this current administration has managed to implement our national values in as far as sustainable development is concerned, I will mention that in 2020, we had an economic growth of minus 2.8%. But last year, our economic growth grew to almost 4.5%. This year, 2024, economic growth is predicted to grow in the range of 4.8% to about 5%. This in itself shows that this current administration, through the President Hakainde Hichilema, is walking the talk and is doing that which is necessary to make sure that this country grows and the people of this country enjoy economic growth. The other aspect that we need to talk about in as far as economic growth is concerned and how this government, through President Hakainde Hichilema, has positively contributed to its economic growth is the manner in which the President and his administration have handled the issue of the debt. We inherited a mountain of a debt that has made it almost very difficult for us to move in a positive manner. But we have seen how this administration has managed to restructure the debt to the extent that we are almost closing the issue of the debt restructuring. When that is done, we know that this is going to contribute effectively to the growth of our economy. The other aspect, of course, is what the Minister of Mines was speaking to just a few minutes ago, the issue of how the mining sector has been revamped. Our mining sector was in ICU when we took over office. But today, as we speak, I think we are seeing a lot of lights at the end of the tunnel. So this also shows that our move, or our journey in implementing our national values in as far as economic growth is concerned, we have made quite serious strides. And I'm happy to mention that tomorrow, the President actually is handing over Mopani to the new investor, which in itself is a positive move. I want to speak to the aspect of sustainable development as it speaks to social inclusion. This is an area, again, where this government has scored a lot. So when we talk about social inclusion, we are talking about the issues of how our people have benefited through CDF. Today, as we speak, we have seen the President make pronouncements in terms of having schools being constructed, new schools being constructed. Our youths, our children now are able to go to school, sit in proper classroom blocks with desks. This is something that was not there in the past. We are seeing our mothers now going to deliver in proper maternity wings. This is another major achievement which this administration has scored. We are also seeing how this administration has brought to life the aspect of skills development. Young children are now able to go to trade schools, to learn how to drive, to learn how to build, to learn how to become mechanics. All this goes to the fact that this administration has done quite a lot to make sure that this country is in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, the next aspect that I wanted to speak to is the aspect of environmental protection. This is a very critical area because you've seen how damage to the environment actually has now given us a big problem in as far as the debt is concerned. We are being affected due to lack of rain because of how we are managing our environment. But I'm happy to mention that the President in his speech mentioned about the target of 2 million trees to be planted by the year 2028. Of course, I know we are currently at 645,000 trees, which of course is not much, but I think it's very important in the sense that trees are important in trying to help us have rain. So the rain cycle is dependent on how many trees we have. So this is a good move, And I think we urge our administration to continue in this journey to make sure that by 2028, the 2 million trees would have been planted, because trees help in, they act as carbon sinks, which of course helps to avoid the destruction of the ozone layer. Mr. Speaker, I want to end my debate by mentioning that sustainable development is not complete if, as a country, as a people, we don't take this process of development ourselves. Zambians, we should be the drivers of our own development process if sustainable development is to make sense, or if we are to achieve the aims and goals of sustainable development. But I want to thank my president, because again, this is another area where he's walking the talk. What does it mean for us to be the drivers of our own development process? It means with CDF, the president has told us, can we employ local contractors? Can we make sure that we give our own people the opportunity to choose what projects they want to implement? So it's very important that as Zambians, we don't look to the outside to come and develop our country. Let us sit in the driver's seat, and let those who are coming to help us be in the back, so that when they are done with whatever help they're trying to give us, they can jump off the vehicle and we continue driving that vehicle, which we call a development vehicle, ourselves as Zambians. So finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to say we have the right president driving this development vehicle for us as a country, and I have no doubt that by the end of 2031, this country will be different. By 2031, this country will be different. I thank you.
Order. The Honorable Member from Kana.
Mr. Speaker, the President came to address this Parliament on the progress that government has made in the application of values and principles. I would like to be as simple as I can be. Let me start with perhaps defining these two terminologies. Values, Mr. Speaker, refers to beliefs that motivates the way people behave. Principles, on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, is a set of rules that governs our behavior. Some time back, in memory, Mr. Speaker, we agreed as a people that we shall be governed by a particular set of principles and values. And these do not exist in abstract. They are coined down in the Constitution in Article 8. The coming to this August House, Mr. Speaker, by the President to address us was not a mere coincidence. It is dictated by the Constitution in Article 9(2). There are a number of values and principles as enshrined in Article 8. I will restrict myself, Mr. Speaker, on account of time, to two principles: democracy and constitutionalism. Mr. Speaker, democracy is derived from a Greek word, demos, which means people, kratos, which means power or rule. Or simply put, Mr. Speaker, democracy refers to a system that believes in the freedoms and equality of people. In short, this is a system that recognizes that power lies with the people, not in an individual. Constitutionalism, Mr. Speaker, refers to the adherence to the constitutional system of governance. What this Parliament was expecting, Mr. Speaker, on page 9, as the President addressed us, was to speak to the strides that government has made, particularly in the promotion and defending of the rights and freedoms of people. Mr. Speaker, when we speak to the freedoms, freedom to associate, freedom to assemble, these are fundamental freedoms that the President should have spoken to as what government has done in the promotion of those very important freedoms. The UPND government, Mr. Speaker, goes down in history to have done the opposite in regards to the promotion of these freedoms. To over 2.5 years, Mr. Speaker, the freedom of people to assemble has been stepped on. No political grouping has been able to assemble in over 2 years, Mr. Speaker. This is contrary to what the UPND used to lament about when they were in the opposition. This country would have expected that the UPND would have done something different. The freedom to associate, Mr. Speaker, vests in the registrar of society, because when people decide to assemble, they will go and register an entity, be it a political party, an association, or otherwise. Today, Mr. Speaker, for the very first time in the history of this country, the office of the registrar has been reduced to a circus.
Honorable member, honorable member. Honorable member for which constituency? You know, we all know the rules of the House. You don't have the right to bring the office of the registrar to disrepute without evidence whatsoever. Whatever allegations that you are alleging, you should be able to substantiate. You can't say the office of registrar has been brought to disrepute without any evidence, just assertions. You don't do that. It's disappointing that some of you that are busy heckling around are people that have been here much longer. It's disappointing. You know that in this house, we talk with verified facts. You can't just wake up and say the office has been reduced. Against what? What evidence do you have? So let's avoid making such kind of debate. Let's talk from a verified point of view. You can proceed, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, not long ago, this country was entertained to the happening in the registry of society regarding the happening in the Patriotic Front, where the registry of society had to be removed from office over the happenings in regards to the PF. Today, Mr. Speaker, reports are that our friends who are sitting...
Honorable member, I've guided you. I've guided you that when talking you should have facts. You don't have facts whatsoever why whoever was removed from the office and on what grounds. You are not appointing authority, neither are you, the registrar was reporting to you. Let's talk from an informed point of view. Let's avoid making assertions that you can't substantiate. I've guided you. You don't have the mandate whatsoever to know who transfers who to what. So don't talk about things that you can't, you don't have, you've got very little information about them. You may continue with your debate.
Mr. Speaker, the President should have come to address this Parliament on the progress that has been made in regards to the protection and promotions of the rights and freedoms of people. Mr. Speaker, the freedom to express ourselves is enshrined in our Constitution. Today, it is on record, a lot of Zambians have been treated like second-class citizens for merely expressing divergent views. It is on record, Mr. Speaker, to an extent where, Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, the government through the Ministry of Information is amending the law, the IBA Act, to gag people from even speaking, communicating through social platforms. It's fact. Constitutionalism, Mr. Speaker. Two principles of constitutionalism. Number one, separation of power. Separation of power refers to the independence and autonomy of the three arms of government as well as governance institution. There are critical governance institutions like the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Every citizen has a right to be appointed, but citizens that are politically connected cannot be and should never be appointed to institutions like the Electoral Commission of Zambia, because it compromises the integrity of the elections in that institution. It is on record, Mr. Speaker, and an outcry recorded that individuals that are politically connected were appointed to lead the Electoral Commission of Zambia. The results have been very glaring bad. To an extent, Mr. Speaker, that the Constitutional Court in one instance rules saying this person and that person is eligible to contest in an election. The case of Honorable Joe Malangi and Bowman, the Electoral Commission of Zambia, because of being aided by cadres, goes and overrules the Constitutional Court.
Honorable member, I've guided you. I've guided you. I've guided you. You know, what you are supposed to concentrate on is the presidential speech. Then making these assertions that you are trying to do to gain political mileage, which is not necessary. It's not necessary to do that. You are alleging that relatives have been appointed, all that. It's not necessary. Are you able to substantiate that they are relatives? So concentrate on presidential speech. If you continue, I'll curtail you. I won't allow you to proceed.
When I was in secondary school in grade 11, I was the debate president of Kawamba Boys. The rules of debate are such that you infer happenings so that you can build a line of thought. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the autonomy and independence of the three arms of government, one of the arms of government is the legislature. This August House here is expected to be independent and autonomous, because any interference in here...
Honorable member, you are not allowed.
Do you want to debate or you want me to debate?
Listen, may you take your seat. Take your seat. The rules don't even allow to debate ourselves. You should make yourself familiar with the standing orders. The next member, Honorable Member for Chama North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for according me this opportunity on behalf of the good people of Chama to add my voice on the presidential speech which was rendered to this August House on Friday last week by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, on the progress made in the application of the national values and principles. Mr. Speaker, the President touched on a number of issues, but due to limitation of time, I will dwell on specific few issues. Mr. Chairperson, the issue of human dignity, equity, social justice, equality, and non-discrimination. The President spoke about to strengthen the fabric of our nation in line with our motto, One Zambia, One Nation. Mr. Speaker, this country has enjoyed peace and stability from 1964, and this peace and stability has not come by accident. This peace and stability this country is enjoying today is because all successive governments have been able to abide by the principles of One Zambia, One Nation. And I think it is important that we must guard jealously this particular motto if this country has continued to enjoy peace and stability. And if we take peace for granted, we have seen what has happened in other countries where peace has been taken for granted. Mr. Speaker, the happenings in this country is very, very sad. One does not need to be a rocket scientist to clearly state that in our society today, in the private sector, in the civil service, in the state-owned enterprises, issues of tribalism, nepotism has continued to come up. It's very, very sad coming from the trade union, someone who was trained to fight for the rights of the Zambian workers and to fight for social justice. A person who was schooled by Kenneth Kaunda and UNIP, who believes in the doctrine of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda and UNIP. It's a very sad development. Mr. Speaker, speaking as a former trade union leader, when you read certain newspapers today, 27 sues ZESCO alleging tribalism by selecting for dismissal employees from northern Wapula and eastern regions. It's a very sad leading for this country. Let's not bury our heads in the sand and pretend that all is well. I've said that this country has enjoyed peace and stability.
Honorable member, you are making reference to the paper that hasn't been laid on the table and admitted. So let's ensure that we confine ourselves to the debate. If you are to use any relevant document, it has to be submitted and admitted. So let's avoid making reference to the paper that you have. Let's ensure we confine ourselves to the presidential debate.
Mr. Speaker, well guided. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about what is happening currently in our country. In the civil service, where is social justice? If people can be sent home, they are getting a salary, government running parallel payrolls, more than 500 civil servants. What is that social justice? Do we call that prudent management of public resources? People have, parallel payroll, people at home and getting a salary without justified reasons why those employees must be sent home. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe that issues of nepotism and tribalism are worse than corruption. And for some of us who are schooled by Kenneth Kaunda, who believes in Dr. Kaunda's doctrine, I think issues of tribalism, nepotism, we must make laws which should carry stiff penalties against people who practice tribalism. Because tribalism has retarded progress in Africa, and Africa has remained behind because people are not appointed on merit, and that's why you find that the right people are in the diaspora. If you go around the neighboring countries, Zambians are in the diaspora. Why are they in the diaspora? So I believe that I think this is an issue which we must not continue to bury our heads in the sand, and be able to deal with these issues in a more holistic manner. Non-discrimination. The President spoke about non-discrimination. Today, Mr. Speaker, we have an animal farm type of justice. Other people are jailed for hate speech, while others are shielded from prosecution. I do not think that that is promoting the spirit of non-discrimination. Mr. Speaker, patriotism and national values on page 5. I totally agree with the President that this plays a very significant role in promoting national identity and ensuring that there's political instability in this country. The President spoke about to promote local ownership of property and business ventures. I totally agree. But today, Zambians today, they own property, they are being followed. Foreigners who have amassed wealth, they are not followed by the Drug Enforcement Commission. They are not followed by the Anti-Corruption Commission. The forfeiture, Mr. Chairperson, the forfeiture of proceeds of crime, I believe that this law was well intended, but I believe it's being abused by the law enforcement agencies. Today, people are losing property which they acquired many, many years ago. But today, we are basing on the current value, the today's value, when this property was bought many, many years ago, whereby it's becoming very difficult for these people to defend themselves in the courts of law, and in the process they are losing property unfairly. I do not think that that is good for our country. We must realize that today we may be in office, tomorrow we may not be there. So I want a situation where we must be fair, where Zambians must have the right to own property. The burden of proof on the proceeds of crime must be on the state, not on the accused persons, because this particular law, I believe, is being abused. Mr. Speaker, coming from the trade union, today we are talking about social justice. We have workers, former workers, who can't be paid their annuity by LASIF for 3 years.
Order.
Up to this time.
Order.
With those few remarks,
Order, Honorable Member.
I think, Mr. Speaker, I need protection. I've been very sober in this parliament.
Order,
so
order. Honorable
Mr.
Member,
Speaker,
you
I
are
must be
protected. Honorable Minister, Honorable Minister of Water, Honorable Minister of Water, the Honorable Member is complaining when he was talking, we were distracting him. The Honorable Member Foron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let me begin by acknowledging and accepting and thanking the President for coming by following the Constitution of our country when he came to address this House and the nation at large in the progress that we have made in the application of national values and indeed principles. Mr. Speaker, I'll just restrict myself to 2 items that the President talked about, and this is as enshrined in our Constitution under Article 8, which are prescribed as national values and principles, as moralities and ethics, patriotism and national unity, democracy and constitutionalism, human dignity, equity, social justice, equality and non-discrimination, good governance and integrity, and indeed sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, I want to just restrict myself to page 1 where there was morality and ethics. The President actually lamented in the number of increase in social misgivings such as early marriages and of course adolescent abuse. Mr. Speaker, indeed today it has become very sad that there are so many early child marriages and indeed there are so many child pregnancies. But what has been causing this, Mr. Speaker, is that if you came to my constituency, Ron, children, especially a girl child, were subjected to walking long distances to go and attend to classes. Children, earlier girl childs, were walking long distances to go and start boarding in town without the parental care. Mr. Speaker, this contributed massively to early marriages and to child pregnancies. Mr. Speaker, it's in that case that I want to say thank you very much for the CDF, because this is actually helping in reducing early marriages and child pregnancies. Why am I saying so, Mr. Speaker? In my constituency, where children used to walk 10 kilometers to go and reach the nearest school, today I have built a school out of CDF closer to the families of these children, and they are able to report back to their parents and they are able to be in their parental custody, hence reducing these issues of early marriages. Unlike when they are away from their parents lodging into various homes without parental care. Mr. Speaker, equally on child pregnancies, this has drastically reduced because of the same. Today, children are able to report back to their parents after attending school. You can imagine in peri-urban areas, I have 3 peri-urban wards where children would walk 3-4 kilometers, passing through thickets, which was endangering their lives, where actually a lot of early pregnancies were coming from because boys were laying them on their way. Mr. Speaker, it is a plus that I would want to urge the UPND government to continue improving the CDF fund, which will actually help in reducing such vices. Mr. Speaker, I would always want to be candid and sober as I speak. When I was growing up, Mr. Speaker, my father was a miner, and this time in Oxford, we used to run to him and say, "Watata Nchololo." Why were we saying that? Because we knew that my father, today is a month end, Mom is going to cook Nshima with the best relish, and it's just worth saying thank you very much, Mom and Dad, for preparing good Nshima today. The same applies to the new Dawn government. What is wrong for own constituents to say thank you for bringing that school closer to the parents? Thank you for bringing that water closer to the parents. We want to urge them, in as far as there are so many things that we need to see from this government, but where they are doing well, we need to say thank you. Mr. Speaker, I said I'm going to restrict myself to 2 issues. I also want to talk on the issue that the President alluded to on page 16, and this is concerning corruption. Mr. Speaker, today with the enhanced CDF funds, so many people will be tempted. And this is a timely warning from the speech of the President that this government is going to deal with any corruption that might happen now. And I want to urge all the members of Parliament to ensure that we help the President fight corruption. Corruption is a cancer. Corruption retards development. And where there is corruption, only a few people benefit. Mr. Speaker, I want also to bring to light to the government, to the executive, that because corruption was so rampant in the yesteryears, which we want you executive of today to fight vigorously and ensure that whoever was involved in corruption is brought to book. Today, the people of Rwansha could not benefit from the slag dumps that were left by our fathers, the so-called Black Mountains. Today, the people of Ron constituency, Rwansha district, could not benefit from anything that our colleagues in Mufurira Kankoyo, our colleagues in Nkana Mopani are benefiting. What is the reason, Mr. Speaker? Some people pocketed money, sold government properties, and put that money in their pockets. As area member of Parliament, I challenge the executive to investigate that and ensure that whoever partook into that transaction is brought to book. The people of Ron constituency are not able to benefit from the tailing dams because some people benefited from the money. That was corruption, and it must be fought. And we want to know who benefited from government properties and who benefited from that money, which was supposed to go into Control 99. Mr. Speaker, in the same vein, alcohol abuse, I also want to encourage every one of us to put our heads together and ensure that we fight alcohol abuse. Our children today, we are giving them the names of junkies. It is because us parents, we are not taking extra care of them. We all know when our children leave home, they carry those bags behind them. Do we bother to check what they are carrying in their bags? We don't bother. That is a serious omission. Those bags that they carry behind them, there are a lot that we can find and there are a lot that we can discourage our children to do. We want to call upon DEC to come on board and vigorously start going into constituencies and start conducting sensitization programs so that our children can reform and be called better names. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I would want to thank you on behalf of the people of Ron constituency for awarding us this opportunity to add a voice on the presidential speech. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Lundazi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving the people of Lundazi a chance to debate on this presentation by the President on the application of national values and principles. Mr. Speaker, we turn to page 10, where we're looking at human dignity, equity, social justice, equality, and non-discrimination. I want to quote, "Government has the responsibility to uphold the dignity of our citizens as well as their right to social justice and equal treatment. Our development efforts are therefore centered on uplifting the livelihood of all our people. In this regard, provision of clean water and adequate sanitation, quality education and healthcare, access to electricity, social protection and youth empowerment, as well as the provision of maternal health services are key priority areas for this government." Mr. Speaker, in debating this presentation by the President, I want to state that Zambia today, we cannot say we have any human dignity. Why am I saying this? There is no dignity in hunger. Zambia has been declared a hungry nation. When you move, you go into your constituency, calls which are coming, people who are visiting you, everyone is talking about hunger. Where have we gone wrong as a nation? What have we done wrong to end up to this level? We are checking the progress which has been made. Where were we at 2021 and where are we today? Why should Zambia honestly get to the level of begging for food? What have we done wrong? We need to ask ourselves a question. This is not a question that begs an answer from the executive. It begs an answer from both the executive and us who are in the opposition. The question that is there, did we offer enough checks and balances so that the Ministry of Agriculture could have done the correct thing? Did the government adhere to what the opposition was saying so that we could have averted this hunger, which has come on us like a bandit? Now we have to source for food from nations where we're exporting. Why were wrong policies being allowed on the floor of the House? Why did we allow exports as a country? It is wrong to rule a country in such a way. It is very wrong to take away food that belongs to your children and give it to others. Never again should such a thing happen. In this script, there must be where apologies must be made if something has been done wrong. Food was in board. What happened? Why did the Ministry of Agriculture start exporting the food which we need so much today? It is very painful as a country that our dignity is now at stake. We cannot live in such a way, and we are being called honorable members of parliament here. It is easy for us. We have eaten breakfast. They even called us for break. And now we're going to have supper where we are going. What about our people in the village? It is painful, and such a thing should never happen. That you should take food, you go and sell it abroad, and you should go back and start buying it at a higher price. Where is the dignity? For me, I find it very painful. I find it very painful that today we are a hungry nation. It is a shame on us that we are hungry. Insala tayakwata omuchinshe.
Order.
If you are suffering, it is not healthy.
Order, Honorable Member for Lundazi, there's a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I raise on a point of order pursuant to order number 65, content of debate. Honorable Mr. Speaker, is the Honorable Member of Parliament for Lundazi, in order to mislead the nation, and herself asking that where have we gone wrong, when she's quite aware that the farmers, the time a PF lost power, they were not paid by the maize which they supplied to the nation. And the other thing is that she's forgetting that the PF borrowed money, the money which they did not pay. And the result, the negative results are only seen now that the UPND government are paying from their careless borrowing of money for this nation. And now she's forgetting that it is because of the carelessness borrowing and the carelessness managing of the country by the PF. Now we are beginning now to see the results of the carelessness of PF. Mr. Speaker, I need your serious ruling on this one. Thank you very much.
Order. But the Honorable Member, you've sufficiently debated your point of order. May the Honorable Member for Lundazi continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The issue of hunger begs for a very good answer. We were called, we were voted for, we were brought into this house to defend this nation. We cannot allow ourselves to be hungry. It is painful to be hungry. We will not allow our people to be hungry because of wrong policies. Here, there were vows which were being made by the Minister of Agriculture. I'm going to export all the maize. And here we are today.
Order. Honorable Member for Lundazi.
Because of poor policies.
Honorable Member for Lundazi.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker.
There is a point of order by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I wish not to disturb the good debate which the Honourable Member was giving us. But in all honesty, is she in order to engage me personally into a debate using my name, to engage me personally into a debate which does not necessarily talk about hunger? Mr. Speaker, may I be told, if the maize which is so said to have been sold by me was paid for, I've said it in this house that maize was unpaid for. We needed to sell it in order to pay for. The Minister of Finance is here. I went to his office so many times. What about this maize? Sell the maize and pay the farmers. Is Madam from Lundazi in order to honestly mislead herself? I won't mention the other one behind there. I won't mention him, but he knows. Mislead herself, mislead members of the family of this chamber, the nation at large, and the world, that indeed we sold maize and now we are hungry. Is she in order, Mr. Speaker, to continue propagating something which is not necessary? Agriculture is a unifier. I wish not to debate in that way, my dear sister. Let's debate properly. if I get emotional the way you are, we will confuse the world. So, Mr. Speaker, please guide my friend not to debate like that. I wish not to get into fights over maize. I thank you.
Order. The honorable member for Lundazi, let's desist from debating ourselves. I think the honorable minister is executing his works, executing because he's duly in that office. As such, let's avoid personalizing debate. And also, I think let's ensure that whatever we say is something that is truthful, considering that the minister had been on the floor of the House, and he mentioned how the purported exports were done and what led to that. So you may proceed with your debate, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, there is no dignity in hunger. No wonder I'm talking like this. If it was anything else, I would have maybe negotiated. The problem is that when I sit in my constituency, there is hunger. The challenge which is there, Mr. Speaker, is when the opposition is trying to question some of the things, the executive must have bigger ears and a very small mouth so that they can, whatever they are saying can sink in and they can be able to digest it and later make good policy statements. Because you are my brother, I stop here. Mr. Speaker, the issue of health care in my constituency has not made any progress. As we are talking right now, we only have one doctor, the whole of Lundazi, taking care of Chama, taking care of Chasefu, taking care of Lumezi. Only one doctor. How can one doctor run the whole institution? It's only in Lundazi where we have clinics closing and hospitals closing because of no workers. Mr. Speaker, where is the human dignity in our constituency? Where people are being employed, but they cannot be sent where they are supposed to go and work. Mr. Speaker, with these few remarks and due to limited time, I want to insist that there's no human dignity in hunger, there is no human dignity in begging, and there's no human dignity when we are losing our lives every day. People are dying because the UPND government has failed to send doctors to Lundazi. And I submit with pain because there is no way one doctor, a Dr. Malichi, can run that whole institution day in, day out, operate the OPD and be able to take care of the other patients. Don't kill people. You are in government. I submit.
The honorable member for Pemba.
I am so humbled, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I begin by thanking and congratulating His Excellency Mr. Hakainde Hichilema and the UPND government for bringing this country, Zambia, back in the Champions League of Nations. Mr. Speaker, it is by design and not by accident that your country is now rated number 3 after the democratic space was shrinking at a faster rate during the PF law. Mr. Speaker, the Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, rated Zambia as a hybrid regime in 2020. And in 2018, Zambia was ranked number 8 in Africa and number 99 in the world in terms of democratic space. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the Freedom House ranked Zambia number 52 out of 100. Vindem this year ranked Zambia number 3. Mr. Speaker, this is not a mean achievement by the New Dawn government. What this simply means, Mr. Speaker, is that the freedom of speech has been enhanced under UPND government. The freedom of assembly, Mr. Speaker, has been enhanced under the UPND government. Mr. Speaker, the abolishment of death penalty is one thing the people of Pemba constituency do appreciate. Mr. Speaker, we have seen a former president, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, retiring and coming back into active politics because of the democratic space that have been enhanced by the UPND
There's
government.
A point of order.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to raise my point of order, citing Standing Order number 65. Mr. Speaker, our rules are very, very clear and very instructive at the same time. In here, we do not discuss people who are outside and cannot be here to defend themselves. Is the Honorable Member of Parliament for Pemba in order to engage the former head of state in his debate when the speech of His Excellency the President, Dr. Hakainde Hichilema, is very, very clear. There is no mention of Dr. Edgar Chagwa in that speech. Is he in order to veer off from the speech which is under consideration and start discussing people who are not in here? I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Pemba, let's ensure that we don't bring in people that can defend themselves. Our rules don't allow. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm talking of a position the former president who retired from active politics and later bounced back because of the democratic space that has been enhanced. Mr. Speaker, it's because of the UPND policies and the democratic space that has been enhanced, this former president managed to form an alliance called UKA. Mr. Speaker, I'm a delighted member of Parliament representing the people of Pemba constituency because there was no disturbance, no cadreism that disturbed the formation of this so-called UKA or UKWA, if you like. Mr. Speaker, we have had quite a number of by-elections that included parliamentary and ward by-elections. It is so interesting, Mr. Speaker, and it makes me proud to belong to the party that promotes democracy. Mr. Speaker, these by-elections were conducted in a fair manner. We did not see pangads like it was under the PF. Mr. Speaker, There were no self-imposed commanders during these by-elections. Mr. Speaker, no death was recorded. Mr. Speaker, this makes the people of Pemba constituency proud that now we have a leader that respects human rights. Mr. Speaker, this August House witnessed a member engaging His Excellency the President in a disrespectful manner. But this member was not disturbed. This member was not even attacked by cadres. If it was during the PF, I don't know what would have happened to the member. We thank the UPND government for being tolerant. Mr. Speaker, the UPND government have created a conducive environment for journalists. The journalists, Mr. Speaker, are able to perform their duties without any disturbances. The journalists, Mr. Speaker, they are able to perform their duties without political interference. Mr. Speaker, to date, no radio or TV station has been closed. That is what we call democracy. May I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to speak to the enhanced CDF. Mr. Speaker, our constituencies, especially the rural constituencies, has been turned into construction sites, benefiting our youths. Speaking for Pemba constituency, a total number of 51 classroom spaces has been created because of the new Dawn government. This has benefited 2,040 pupils. Mr. Speakers, these are pupils who were learning under trees during PF. Mr. Speaker, we have also provided desks in these classrooms. Under PF, these pupils were sitting on the floor while attending classes. Mr. Speaker, over 400 youths are undergoing skills training. And out of this, we have students who are doing plumbing and sheet metals.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I thank you.
Order. The Honorable Member for Lukulu East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also contribute to the motion on the floor, which motion relates to the presidential address last Friday on the progress made in the application of national values and principles. Mr. Speaker, many of my colleagues in here have alluded to the vexing question of alcohol and substance abuse. And I would like to restrict my contribution to this subject matter because it is very close to my heart and I do some work around this issue and I thought I could actually contribute to this. And in so doing, first I would like to quote what His Excellency said on Friday on page 2, paragraph 3. This is what he said, I quote, alcohol, he said, Madam Speaker, alcohol and substance abuse continues to be a major concern in the country. It negatively impacts families and national productivity. The abuse of alcohol and substance abuse among our young people has contributed to an increase in juvenile criminal gangs, commonly referred to as junkies. This is worrisome and a security concern. It must be curbed forthwith. And I'll repeat this last sentence in this quotation. It must be curbed forthwith. Considering that this was coming from the head of state, I consider it as a directive. Honorable members, first I want to salute him for this, and he has been very consistent, by the way. He has seized every opportunity to counsel citizens on the harmful use of alcohol and substance abuse. Even on Youth Day, he talked about come over. During the planting season, he advised citizens on the harmful use of alcohol. Now, Mr. Speaker, listen to this. In 2023, just next door here at Chainama Hills Hospital, the hospital saw 22,760 patients the whole year. More than half of these were actually as a result of harmful use of alcohol. Number two, if you go to our Chainama right now, those that are admitted, 43% of them are admitted there as a result of alcohol-related disorders. So that is how serious this problem is. And I salute all of you colleagues who have alluded to this fact. Apart from that, the biggest problem is that this alcohol which is causing all these is illicit alcohol. Now, illicit alcohol is defined as alcohol that is produced or brought in without regard to regulation or to standards. And this involves alcohol such as junta, such as cachasu, such as all sorts of wines and so on, which are made in the backyard, or that is falsified, or that is even counterfeited. This is what is causing a lot of our problems. Yeah. And that is what 70% is what is being consumed around and causing all these problems which we have highlighted here. Most of these are our young people, and therefore it goes without saying that we need to support the head of state in this, especially that he has said this must be kept forthwith. And that's why we need to join forces together. All of you honorable members, we need to join forces together to create a social movement around dissuading our young people, if possible, to do away with these illicit alcohols. Honorable members, I want to mention to all of you that in the last 2 weeks, myself and 3 other colleagues, we've started a movement known as the Coalition Against Illicit Alcohol. You must have seen some adverts running during news times. You must have seen the launch that happened at City Market. This is just but one of the examples which we need to do, all of us. And we want to partner with all those that are interested for the very first time in dealing with this issue of illicit alcohol, because we are sitting on a time bomb. You can imagine, as I've showed you, that it contributes to the impairment of mental health of our people. So what kind of young people, what kind of citizens are we going to have in the next few years if they are the biggest cause of attendance to China? So please don't just sit back, don't watch these young people, or indeed any of our citizens who are hooked onto this. Let's say no to illicit alcohol. Let's say no to junta. Let's say no to cachasu. We are not for, it is impractical to ask you that don't drink, but drink in moderation. But don't drink illicit alcohol. So we need, as members of parliament, those of us with authority, to strengthen our legislative and policy framework around alcohol in terms of enforcing the Liquor Licensing Act, in terms of enforcing the alcohol policy, which is currently, probably I would say, just packed there. We need to join forces together with the traditional leadership, as Honorable Nakaponda said, policymakers yourselves. We need to join with the church, and I must commend the Churches Health Association of Zambia together with the Catholic Church, who are doing a lot of work with the SDA in the area of trying to deal with alcohol. Would you believe, honorable members, that up until now, we do not have a government rehabilitation institution for alcohol? So all these patients, I've told you, when they are discharged, they are sent back again to the very community which created this problem. So I would like to urge the minister responsible for health, the minister responsible for local government, and all of us to ensure that we help to raise the profile of mental health services in this country and also build a rehabilitation center for those of our young people who have been affected by this vice. This is real, honorable members. And I'm sure you see it in your constituencies, all of you, how much consumption is going on. I don't want to mention which constituencies are leading here, but we intend to work with you. We intend to work with you, honorable members, to curb this vice. Lastly, I just want to dispel, I noted some comments that were directed at the executive and the UPND in terms of recruiting cadres in some of the key institutions. This is further from the truth. I am aware that Article 3 of the PF Constitution clearly states that some of the key positions will be held by PF cadres. I am also aware that in our current dispensation, we've done away with the indiscriminate use of retiring people in national interest. But that is what was happening previously. So I think that members must be careful when they make comments to this kind of situations without necessarily regard to some facts. Going back to my subject of alcohol, honorable members, I would like to end here, but please let us all say no to junta. And finally, kumwa stilesa.
Order.
Thank you very much.
Her Honor, the Vice President adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
As no notice of an item for debate on the motion of adjournment of the House has been received, I put the question. The question is that the House do now adjourn. Any debate? Any objection? The question is agreed to. The House is now adjourned.
Good evening. We are still watching Parliament television. The House has just adjourned until tomorrow at 14:30 hours. We go straight into looking at business that has been considered on the floor of the House from the time it resumed at 14:30.
The House considered two questions for oral answer under Standing Order number 74. Question 319 came from Mr. Miutu of Kalabo Central Constituency. It was directed at the Minister of Justice. Mr. Miutu wanted to find out at what intervals local courts countrywide receive grants from the government. And the Minister of Justice did say that grants are received quarterly, totaling an amount of 1,741,643 kwacha 18 ngwe. In the other part of the question, Mr. Miutu wanted to know whether there are any plans to increase the amount allocated to each grant. And the minister did say that government will try to increase the amount in line with the physical space.
Another question, question number 320, came from Chitambo Member of Parliament, Mr. Remember Mutale. He directed this question to the Minister of Small and Medium Enterprise Development. He wanted to find out when the government will empower marketeers in Chitambo district with the marketeer booster loans. And the minister did say that the government is empowering all marketeers across the country, including those from Chitambo district. And from the time the product was launched in November 2022 up to December 2023, a total of 74,392 marketeers have benefited from the marketeer booster loans.
So those are the two questions for oral answer under Standing Order number 74 that were considered on the floor of the House. Kabwe Central Member of Parliament, Ms. Chrysosta Halwind, was supposed to move a private member's motion titled Introduce Tree Planting Week, that in order to mitigate the effects of climate change, the House urges the government to introduce an annual tree planting week. And so the Kabwe Central Member of Parliament requested for the motion to be deferred to a later date, and leave was granted.
After that, the House went on to consider two bills that came at second reading stage, and the first one which was considered is the Minerals Regulation Commission Bill, National Assembly Bill number 1 of 2024, which has been considered and the committee stage is expected to be taken on 26 March 2024.
The other bill that was considered at second reading stage was the Investment, Trade and Business Development Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 3 of 2024. It passed the second reading stage, and committee stage will take place tomorrow.
After consideration of those bills, there was resumption of debate on a motion of thanks. His Excellency the President's address that the thanks of this Assembly be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in His Excellency the President's address, a motion that was moved by Mr. Davison Mungandu, Chama South Member of Parliament, and seconded by Nalikwanda Member of Parliament, Mr. Simunji.
Well, that's it. A debate resumes tomorrow, Thursday. So that's all the time that we had for you today. Be sure to join us tomorrow at 14:30 for more live parliamentary proceedings. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for your time and have a lovely night. Bye-bye. Onoyo constituency, we profile one of the most prominent constituencies in the country.
The constituency is facing a lot of challenges, but the major ones are, number one, poor road network, communication network, no financial institutions, no colleges, no electricity, and inadequate infrastructure in both education and health.
bayuthi nabonayika mulandu n'obwalwa nabana mayo bonse nabaponenamu nsunko obwalwa shena nashibonawula
ekyo ndeko nkomesha ndeko obuyantanshi kuno kwanga obukinjeko kuno mukushi is a farm block and then mukushi no turalima ko things sana so no misevo poor road networks not a challenge tukwete ko tureshingwana na yena.
In Mukushi, we watch Parliament TV.
Watch Parliament TV, the TV that brings Parliament closer to our community.
Parliament TV
Keep watching Parliament Television.
Parliament TV, bringing Parliament closer to you.
Masiku ya kudal simwamene denze my baby simwamene tinalili nigalanga masiku ya kudala simwamene denze my baby simwamene tinalili ukamba na chinja ubudina chinja chabe maningi simwamene tinalili ukamba na chinja ubudina chinja chabe maningi simwamene tinalili